Thank God. Sometimes God gives you an insight. So we know everything is based on something called Ratzu Vshuv. There are many ways of understanding Ratzu Vshuv, many terminologies. It's an all-encompassing of everything. But I want to do a little class on what is Ratzu Vshuv. And thank God, literally, I can't even take any credit for this. I was just literally writing something on my blog, and a deep, if you want to call it, mechanism of how Ratzu Vshuv functions came to me, and I want to share that. So first of all, Ratzu Vshuv is a pulse. It's like a heartbeat. Your heart expands, and when it expands, it allows in blood to come, and of course that blood mixes with the oxygen, and then it contracts. So it's an expansion and a contraction. Now, what came to me, which is really important, is that actually when it expands, it works as a vacuum. So what happens is that the heart cannot take in blood when it's shut. It can only take in blood when it's open. Think about your lungs. I just took a breath. So when I took a breath, I opened it up and air was able to flow in. Now if I breathe out, there's no air there. I have to breathe again. So I'm going to discuss a couple of different ways Ratzu Vshuv functions, and you'll see how everything, in a sense, is a divine heartbeat. The world is pulsating divine heartbeats on so many different levels, on so many different ways, and you are one of those heartbeats, and understand this on many levels. This is a concept that is way beyond my pay grade. It's revealed by Abraham in his book Sefer Yetzirah, from the earliest books of Kabbalah. And let me dive into it a little bit. So first of all, we find Ratzu Vshuv in the very behavior of a human being. Effectively, everything that we have in this world can be combined of spiritual and physical. I have my spiritual self, I have my emotional self, I have my belief system, I have my ideals. All of these things kind of are in my spiritual realm. And then I have my physical self. I have my body. When my body, when there's a lack of food in my body sends signals to my brain, hunger. So there are body reactions. And it's very interesting because most religions have this difficulty putting together the spiritual and the physical. But in truth, they actually complement each other. There's a question in the in the Talmud, what is the most important verse of the Talmud? Confused. What is the most important verse of the Torah? And there are different, you could imagine, what's the most important verse? Maybe Bereshis, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. Maybe, fear of God, I am the God, your Lord. But they all conclude, the most important verse is offer a sacrifice in the morning and the evening, which today means pray to God in the afternoon. So what's so significant about that? Why is that such a significant verse? And the answer is because it's not so hard to get inspired. It's quite hard to remain an inspired person. And this is I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Many of us, I think we all have genius minds, but very few of us use much of it. So the reason is because to actually, even perspiration, even working hard, there's only so much of that you can do. So you have to fluctuate between these two stages. And this is what all of Judaism is. The Alter Rebbe teaches us, that all of Judaism is Ratzu Vshuv, which is, I'll give you some examples. You have Shabbos, a day of inspiration, and then you have the weekday, if you want to call it a day of perspiration. But technically it's like that breath. You take in that holiness, and then you're able to exhale it into the week. So even though, of course, there are physical things that we have to get involved in, but if you have a spiritual moment, when you get involved in the physical, it doesn't take you down. In fact, you lift it up. And the same thing as the Shabbos of the day, whether it's a Torah study in the morning, whether it's the prayer of the morning. We have these dynamics. The male-female relationship, men have more chachma, we're more prone to, if you want to call it spirituality, or at least thinking about these concepts. And therefore, men are able to bring it to the woman. The woman is more grounded. Bino Yesera, women actually have more white matter than men, which makes them more in reality. So you have this combination of these factors. And in fact, the Baal Shem Tov teaches something really, really interesting, really quite amazing. And he says like this: when you eat something, so you go lower, then you want to go higher. So the physical, we go to sleep at night. If we never went to sleep, it would be very difficult to maintain our Judaism, our inspiration, our commitment, because we would always be on this high, and then eventually the high would get boring. Anybody that takes drugs, they get bored of it, they go seek something else, maybe a different high or whatever. So it's very critical to understand that the physical world helps the spiritual world, and the spiritual world, in fact, helps the physical world. They go together. A person that doesn't feel accomplished during the day, they didn't do anything, at nighttime, they don't want to even go to sleep. They feel like, I didn't achieve anything in the spiritual realm. So just to conclude, really I'm just touching a massive, massive subject. Everything has this kind of, we begin actually, the first, if you want to call it the first expansion that we carry in a way, at least on a, if you want to call it on a psychological level, is our ego. We become enamored with ourselves. A little baby cries and our mother feeds her and our mother changes the diaper. And so therefore she becomes, in her own mind, they say there's no greater egoist than a little child. That's why they'll throw a tantrum if you don't give them what they want. Eventually they learn they're not in charge, but first they think that they are in charge. The whole world is there to respond to their needs. And that's a very important thing. Children that unfortunately were neglected, they are zombies. They don't have any ego. It's very important to have an ego. Once Kabbalistically I was able to get rid of the ego, but I became like, I had no more drive. No, you have to have an ego. Now, is it a big problem? Sure, it's a problem. But without that, you don't exist. It's like gas in the car. If you don't have gas in the car, you can't go anywhere. Does it have to be controlled? Can it burn the car if it's uncontrolled? Yeah, so everything has to be balanced. So we begin life with this ego, and then the ego basically has to eventually, and again, it's a massive subject with many details, but just to get to the very core of the subject, there are various religions that go into this whole concept of getting rid of the ego. You can't live without an ego. You have to have self-love. It's very important. But you can become a new self, and that's the key. The key is that not only do you have an animal soul within you, this desire, this when we're young, we take pride in our body because the body got cried, and then the body, that's why people that get depressed, they actually are angry at their body. That's why they don't feed their body. It's like if, God forbid, you had an enemy and he says, give me $2. You say, no, I don't like you. It's subconscious, but that's why they don't take care of their body anymore. Their body desires are not important to them. So we can be in love with the body and think that the body is so great, it did so much, and then we can be upset with the body. Or we can maybe identify with our parents, say, oh, wow, they are the great people. They're the ones that are giving me. And then maybe a person maybe makes some money. They could identify with themselves. Sometimes people identify with the government. They, oh, wow, they're the powerful people. But the truth is that if you were a character in a computer game, like right now I'm talking to you from a screen, who's the most powerful guy here? The computer. Because in 1 second flat, you wouldn't exist. Every second, God is pulsating his energy. It's Ratzu, comes into reality. It's like his heartbeat. It like squeezes into all, if you want to call it the veins, into all the fibers that make up this world. And then it actually goes back. And it's amazing because science has discovered this. Unbelievable to think about that science has proven what Kabbalah said thousands of years ago. Now we know atoms come in and out of existence. Literally. Since you've been listening to this, well done if you made it this far. You and I have come in and out of existence billions of times. That's a fact, scientific fact. And so the point is that this energy kind of goes back and forth into God, which is actually why we matter very much, because what we do when the energy goes back, it's kind of like a parent-child relationship. You might think, oh, the parent matters, but actually no, the child is also creating the reactions in the parent. So a good child, a nice child, makes the parent want to give more. So the more we give down here, the more we love, the more our energy is positive, the more we get positive energy. And that's why the Kabbalah is very into the energy that we're in. I really recommend, I'll try to put a link to my book, Kabbalah Love. It's all about putting yourselves in the right positive energy and getting out of negative energy. Very, very important. Which is why bullying and terrorism is all about putting people into terror, to a negative energy system. You have to be in a positive energy system, which is also why it's so important to believe that everything we're seeing in the world is a lead up to Mashiach. And so I want to conclude with this idea, which is that we also have this infinite capacity of growth. And this is very, very fascinating because this is beyond what any human can have, and I've studied about many different religions and Eastern philosophies, and there's only one only one religion or mysticism that says this. No one else says this because it's beyond human comprehension, which is not only does God kind of pulsate us into existence, not only does the physical pulsate, not only do we have our spiritual self, which effectively that higher self is God, and then we should identify that that is the part that's making this whole thing. So you want to know who's making everything happen? It's actually your own soul is the creator of your own reality, the creator of the universe. But that higher soul in you actually can communicate with you. One of the things that really changed my life, this was a book, it's called 365 Meditations, based on teachings of the Rebbe. It's Zvi Freeman, it's a very, very good book. And effectively, the Rebbe says, if you don't know what to do, you can ask God. And whatever's the first thought is God's reply to you. Because the Baal Shem Tov came along and he said something very fascinating. Obviously, there's a difference between good and bad. But he said that, in fact, there's an infinite level of goodness. So goodness doesn't end. Goodness continuously grows more and more and more. And one of the ways we see this, not only in personal growth, but also in the information that comes to us. Just to use, if I can, myself as an example, I started a blog. I have a blog, KabbalahWisdom.org, and I've written to date probably, I had a previous blog, probably, I don't know, maybe, certainly 150,000 blogs. And that's besides other places, videos and other places that I've put out information. Now, when I started this, I had a little email group, and I thought, how many things I felt called to do this? How many things do I know already that I can share? If you ask me now, how many things do you, I don't know, 1, 2, 10 maximum, 10 good ideas, and yet somehow Hashem just allows me to pick up this idea, even this idea that I just picked up. All these things are gifts. They're gifts of information. The Baal Shem Tov says, wherever you see, whatever you hear, and even sometimes these thoughts that come into our head, they are God communicating with you. So you have to understand, not only is there this physical pulse that pulsates, there's also a spiritual pulse. And so there are many, this thing operates on so many different levels. It's an all-encompassing principle, but we're always learning more, always growing more. So we have to be open to the fact that each and every one of us is part of God, part of his heartbeat, one of his heartbeats, and together we make up the heart of God.